I still remember the look on Deborah Wilson's face when the judge read the injunction against her HOA. That expression like she had bitten straight into a sour lemon. Her cheeks tightening and eyes flashing panic as the reality settled in that she had lost, utterly and publicly, and that the very land she tried to seize from me was slipping back into my hands along with a court-ordered payout of $250,000. Yet what most people don't know is that the final blow, the one that ensured her downfall, began not in that courtroom, but the moment she and her husband Richard Wilson changed the lock on my ranch gate at dawn, completely unaware that the camera mounted above the signpost had captured every second, and that their arrogance had triggered the legal trap I'd been preparing for weeks. Because as a former corporate attorney, I understood leverage documentation and the sweet advantage of letting your opponent hang themselves with their own rope. Before all this chaos, I was simply Jake Reynolds, a lawyer who traded conference rooms in Houston for fresh air in the Texas countryside when my father passed and left me our 20-acre ranch, a humble but deeply meaningful stretch of land protected by grandfather clause from the 1970s that placed it outside the authority of any future homeowners association, which meant, legally speaking, no HOA could touch it, a fact I considered ironclad and unshakable, especially because my father cherished that land more than anything, and honoring his memory became my quiet mission, something grounding, something stable, after years of burnout and disillusionment in the corporate world. That peace evaporated the day I received a neatly folded letter from Silvercrest Estates HOA, accusing me of maintaining a fence that was too tall and a gate that didn't conform to their architectural standards, packed with subtle threats of escalating fines unless I altered both within 30 days. And though I initially laughed at the absurdity, thinking it must have been mailed to the wrong address, dread crept in when a second letter came, followed by a voicemail from Deborah, the HOA president herself, reminding me they expected compliance. I drove straight to the community center where Deborah and her polished, silver-haired husband Richard sat behind a table like royalty at court, and I laid out the official documents proving my ranch was exempt due to its age and classification, expecting the matter to end there. But Deborah leaned back, arms crossed, eyes sparkling with superiority, and claimed their updated bylaws superseded the old exemption, insisting my land was no longer special or protected. And I could feel the temperature rise in the room as Richard hovered with political swagger, trying to intimidate me with smooth words and thinly veiled warnings. Yet amid the posturing, one board member, Tom Miller, shot me a quick glance, a silent message suggesting I wasn't crazy and that Deborah was crossing a line. And after the meeting, he quietly approached, hinting that this wasn't about fence height or gate style, but about acquiring land from unwitting owners, something that allegedly had happened before. Those whispers pushed me into full legal mode, and I drove to the county archives, where I met Sarah Thompson, a diligent clerk who helped me navigate dusty records and public filings, and she revealed something far more sinister. Richard had connections with a development company named Summit Resorts, and several parcels surrounding my ranch had been purchased recently through shell companies, which meant my land was the missing puzzle piece, the final gem in a much larger commercial vision. And to top it off, my property's infrastructure easement, an agricultural heritage designation, made it even more valuable due to its protected status, which, ironically, offered me more legal power than I initially realized. It became clear that Silvercrest Estates HOA wasn't driven by neighborhood aesthetics, but by greed, ambition, and a covert plan to expand development under the guise of community improvement. And I knew then that if I didn't fight, my father's legacy would be swallowed whole under a veneer of bylaws and bureaucracy. What followed was a relentless barrage, letters accusing me of noncompliance, veiled threats urging my neighbors to ostracize me, emergency amendments granting the HOA temporary access rights, and unmarked vehicles parking near my property to photograph supposed violations, a campaign clearly meant to wear me down, isolate me, and make resistance feel futile. But instead of yielding, I crafted a counteroffensive, drafting a response filled with subtle legal traps designed to provoke missteps. And when Tom leaked an internal HOA email where Deborah stated outright that the ranch was critical to Summit Resort's expansion and would increase home values, and that she was prepared to pursue acquisition by any means necessary. I knew her ambition had blinded her to reason, giving me exactly the evidence I needed. Then came the crucial mistake. At 7:30 a.m., Deborah, Richard, and another board member named Doug arrived with bolt cutters, replaced my lock with theirs, and taped a fake county notice claiming Safety Inspection Authority, ignorant of the fact my surveillance system recorded every moment in crisp HD, including their smug smiles and forged paperwork. I immediately called the county office, and Frank Martinez, an infrastructure official, confirmed the notice was counterfeit and that impersonating county authority was a serious crime, especially since the gate granted access to a road servicing a public reservoir, and obstructing it could be considered an interference with critical infrastructure, a legal blow strong enough to make any judge sit up straight. Armed with this, I called my attorney Michael Grant, who nearly laughed in disbelief at how recklessly Deborah and Richard had behaved, explaining they had opened themselves to charges of trespassing, obstruction, and impersonation of officials, exactly the kind of heavy infractions my baited letter had been designed to provoke. When the Wilsons returned to confront me, Richard dropped the civilized mask, showing an aggressive streak, threatening consequences and hinting at connections with Summit Resorts, and though he undoubtedly believed he was intimidating me, he didn't realize my security cameras were still rolling, capturing every incriminating word. A day later, Frank provided written confirmation that the easement on my ranch legally restricted interference, meaning any attempt by the HOA to seize or block the gate could result in penalties tied to infrastructure violations, an unexpected but significant advantage. As pressure mounted, the HOA began calculating fines, $7,300 and counting, and scheduled an emergency board meeting to discuss seizing the property outright, pushing their scheme into overtly illegal territory, and Tom, risking his standing, warned me that they were prepared to make their move and that the showdown was imminent. I spent that night preparing, assembling evidence, alerting the county inspector, coordinating with Michael, testing cameras and microphones, and for the first time, I felt something beyond fear, determination, a sense of calculated readiness, and a simmering rage that the land my father cherished was being targeted by people who saw only dollar signs. The next morning, as predicted, the HOA marched to my gate with a printed seizure order, cameras in tow, ready to declare their victory, but they found me waiting alongside Michael, Frank, and audiovisual evidence ready to roll. And before they could even touch the gate, Tom broke ranks and publicly renounced his support, accusing Deborah and Richard of corruption, shocking the gathered crowd. Confronted, Richard sputtered excuses before slipping and revealing their true motive: profit tied to the Summit Resorts development. And when he escalated to threats, shoving and screaming, the cameras captured everything, a spectacle of arrogance unraveling in the open. News crews arrived, triggered by viral footage already circulating online, and public sympathy shifted rapidly, transforming me from stubborn landowner into underdog victim fighting corporate greed. In court, our evidence was overwhelming. Videos, fake notices, easement violations, internal emails, and most damning of all, a $50,000 consulting fee from Summit Resorts to Richard, exposing bribery, conflict of interest, and fraudulent manipulation of HOA authority. Under mounting pressure, Summit Resorts distanced themselves, abandoning the Wilsons and denying involvement, and the HOA's attorney conceded when faced with irrefutable documentation. The judge ruled unequivocally. HOA jurisdiction did not extend to my land. All fines were void. The lock change, trespassing, and impersonation were illegal. The HOA was liable for damages totaling $250,000. Deborah and Richard were permanently barred from serving on any HOA board. HOA finances would undergo a 5-year audit. The case would be forwarded to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. After the verdict, board members resigned en masse, and Tom was elected as the new HOA president, vowing transparency and fairness. Summit Resorts' plans collapsed. The Wilsons sold their home, left town, and their marriage crumbled under the weight of scandal. My ranch remained intact, save not only legally, but spiritually, as a testament to my father's legacy and a victory of justice over greed. With the compensation, I established a legal support fund for other landowners targeted by overreaching HOAs, and Frank received commendation and eventual promotion for exposing abuse of county authority. In the end, I stood at the gate, my gate, with a new lock, a stronger sense of purpose, and a deeper understanding that vigilance is the price of inheritance. Closure was mine, but now I ask you, when power hides behind policy, when community leadership mutates into tyranny, and when ordinary citizens are forced to defend what should never have been threatened in the first place, is resistance always justified? Or does the pursuit of justice risk turning us into the very thing we fight?